Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mauck Talk. So, how fast week? It seems like we were just here yesterday, but it was more like 7 yesterdays ago. So, babe, how you doing? We're still married, so we made it another week.
One more week.
Rob and Travis could not join us tonight. They are both sick, so
There's stuff going around.
yeah, there's stuff going around. But we do have a special guest tonight, and that is Jay Campbell. He is a good friend, longtime friend, firefighter, and minister. What a combination that is. So, and he's out of Boston. Jay, how are you tonight?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing well, doing well. What's the weather like in Boston tonight?
Oh,
It's actually pretty nice. 40 degrees.
40, yeah. Yeah,
he's got
anytime
an accent.
anytime someone from that area says nice at this time of year, that means not nice in Texan.
Right.
So Jay,
it's better than last week.
we actually had like an inch of snow in Dallas last week, and it just shut the whole place down. The whole town was shut down, state of emergency.
Schools closed.
Schools closed.
Roads closed.
Everyone bought all the bread.
Water.
Not a lot of low carb diets happened during these snowstorms, apparently, because all the stores run out of bread. So, but yeah. So, Jay, we're so glad you could join us tonight. So, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I work as a lieutenant on the fire department. I've been doing that for 20 years now. Great experience. Love doing it. I've also been pastoring for the past 8 years. Grew up in Fall River. Love to travel. Love experiences. For the most part, just trying to live life and make the best of it.
Yeah, awesome. And big Boston sports fan.
Yes.
Patriots.
Go Celtics.
Celtics. Red Sox. I lived in the Boston metro area where you are. And I lived there for several years. And there are it's the most devoted sports fans. You and your fellow your fellow Boston citizens, your fellow Massachusetts citizens, I guess I'm looking for. You love your Bruins. Bostonians.
I said
That's what I was
looking.
I knew there was something. It's been a while. But you love your Celtics and your Bruins and your Red Sox. You know, when I lived there, it was before the Red Sox won that World Series in like 2004. Right. And so
you're dating yourself.
It was still gloom and doom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then go ahead.
I was going to say, I happened to grow up during a time where the Patriots were terrible, but it was just only a few years of seeing them terrible. And then Tom Brady came. Then the Red Sox, Big Papi came and blew it up. Then the Celtics won. Then the Bruins won. So I got to live, I guess, the sports dream as far
as the dream.
Having your local teams. Yeah.
So since 2001, you've had what? 6 Super Bowls.
6 Super Bowls.
2
4 World
NBA
Series.
Championships.
Oh,
2. Yep. 2 NBA, 4 World Series.
Wow.
And one Boston Bruins championship.
One Boston of the 4 sports. I would say, people will ask, they're like, is this a football town? Is this a baseball town? Is this a hockey town? Is this? My opinion of Boston was it was a football town, and that's my opinion. And you tell me if I'm right. But before I moved there, I always assumed it was a baseball town. But I got the feeling that the Patriots were more important than the Red Sox. I don't know why. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, the Red Sox were definitely the team before Tom Brady.
Mm.
After Tom
Yeah.
Brady, it's football. It's Patriots.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tom Brady left his mark, and he changed it. Now, them winning the World Series was great, but there was something about having Tom and 6 Super Bowls.
Wow. Wow.
In that short span, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's 6 Super Bowls.
Patriots first.
You know, the Chiefs are becoming like the Patriots. Like I got to where, so when the Patriots first won, it was cool. It was a cool story, and you rooted for them. Like oh my God, the Patriots! Like they never win. This is the team, and this young guy Tom Brady. And then they got that second one. You're like, oh man, this is cool. And then they got that third one, and you're like, man, I hate this guy. And then 5, 6, you're like, I really hate this guy. Then he goes to the Buccaneers, and you're like, man, I despise this guy. But that's how the Kansas City Chiefs are becoming to me as a 49ers fan. Like Mahomes, Mahomes won his first one against us, and I didn't like it, but I was like, oh yeah, he's a great story. Then he gets that second one. I'm like, that's a pretty good story. Then he beat us again last year, and I'm like, man, I hate this guy. This is the new Tom Brady for me.
Right.
So I think that's how it is. This year, because the Niners are out and the Patriots aren't, I'm rooting for anybody but Kansas City. Anybody.
Right.
I don't want to see.
Same
Yeah.
here.
I don't care. I don't care who. I don't care if it's the Eagles, and I'm not an Eagles fan.
Oh.
I don't like. I don't care much for the city. I don't care much for the team.
Yeah.
It's not an Eagles fan, but I'd rather see the Eagles than the Chiefs.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I am rooting for Philly or Detroit.
Detroit would be
I'm
great.
going against. Yeah, I'm going against my Patriot roots. I want to see the Bills do it.
Well,
those are my 3 right there.
But here's the thing about you. You were a Patriots fan, and your team won like 19 of 20 divisions or something, something insane.
Right.
So you really couldn't hate all the other teams were pathetic in your division. So you just didn't have this hatred towards them. You know, like as a Niners fan, we don't always win the division. So I hate the Seahawks and the Rams, and not really the Cardinals. They kind of suck. But so anyway. Well, all that being
I'll tell you what go ahead. I was gonna say the biggest difference for like our division was before the whole Tom Brady era. All the teams in our division sucked, and so they were good games to watch when they played against each other. Like both teams sucked, so you was like, man, we got a chance here. So you never really got upset because there was really no clear winner. Anybody could win. Well, might be almost like the NFC division, right? They're not the NFC like Atlanta.
Oh yeah, the NFC South just is terrible.
Yeah, like they suck. They can go to the playoffs with like 5-12, record. That's how we were.
Yeah, and and I'm old enough to remember when your division had the Colts in it. You had
that's going back.
5 teams. That's going way back in the day. But anyway, well, we're so glad to have you on the show today. So obviously we brought you on because there's a lot of with the terrible tragedy that's happening out in Southern California with the terrible wildfires. My wife and I lived in California for several years. She was there for about 15 years. But we lived in Northern California, and we had wildfires. It seemed like every year they were out of control, but I don't ever remember in my lifetime LA getting hit like this. I say LA, I know it's the suburbs, but that area. But we're glad, that's why we brought you on today. So first off, tell us a little bit about how long you've been with the fire department, in your rank of lieutenant? Like, kind of tell us your story. We want to kind of hear that, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Yeah, I got on with the fire department in 2005, and it's been a great career. Got to work with a lot of great guys. So for 20 years, I've really been just enjoying a job that the people I work with, we get along. When it's time to work and fight fires, we're all in. On our off time, we're still just great crews, learning and growing. And so I've got to, during that time, be able to move up from being a back guy, sitting on the back of the engine, to driving the engine for several years, to going up to fire prevention, learning about inspecting places, learning about fire arson. So I did that for about 6 years. And then I got promoted a couple years back, and that brought me back into the company. And so that's where I'm at now. I'm in the heart of the city. Love the crew that we got down there. It's a great job. Like, I love it.
Yeah, and Jay, you the city that you actually work in, is it Fall River?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Fall River, Mass.
And for those of you who don't know, Fall River, about 30 miles south of Boston. So what you would consider, from living in Dallas, anything about 60 miles out, you consider Dallas. So definitely just a short drive down to Boston, any of the sports teams that you want to see. So Fall River, and you've been with Fall River the entire time? The Fall River Fire Department?
Yep. Been with the Fall River Fire Department the whole time. Fall River's a old mill city, so we have plenty of mills throughout the city. I mean, back in its heyday, it was one of the richest cities, in the United States, in the world, just for the cotton and everything that they developed in those mills during that time.
Now, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, just in some of these, because we don't understand. So we see what's happening in LA right now, and we see all these different cities that have fires, and then obviously firefighters from all over the country at this point are involved. But when there is there's a major fire in Fall River, and how is it pretty common that at some point, if it's too out of control, the neighboring cities start pitching in? Is that just something that's happened, or are there rules and regulations that keep that from happening? How does that whole thing take place?
Yeah, so typically, city, we have our neighboring cities, New Bedford, Somerset, that'll provide mutual aid. So if one of our mills, which we've had mills in the past, go up, that's gonna take all our manpower to go and fight that. And what'll happen is the mutual aid that we have with our cities around us, they'll send out crews to help, and they'll actually fill in at our stations, taking our normal calls. Or if there's enough of them, they'll come down to the scene and they'll help us out down there. Yeah, it's not uncommon for you to develop relationships with the cities around you or towns around you to be able to come out and support you when you have something that's out of the norm.
Yeah.
That what's happening in LA is not the norm.
Right, definitely. Now, so just so the audience knows, when this happens and you have a fire that you need a neighboring city, is there a whole, and again, ignorant question, I just don't know. Do you have to get permission? Do the mayors have to coordinate it, or is it just like, hey, we have a need and they can come help? For instance, what's going on in LA, is there any kind of permission that they need, or do they just go and pitch in? Or at what point does it get to where maybe the mayors or the governors have to step in and say, we can allow this? Or does none of that happen? Is there no bureaucracy that happens? So kind of explain how that happens.
Yeah, so the mayor, or say the governor, I'm more than sure they are aware
Okay.
of the department's policy of doing it. And typically what happens is mutual aid, you're not paying them to come in and help you.
Okay.
So they're going to send you the resources that they can send you, but they know you're not getting paid. So it's not going to impact like your mayor's budget. And so typically when those calls come in, it'll be like our dispatch, our chief reaching out saying, hey, if you can send someone, we can use the help. And then they'll send what they can. And so as far as it's almost like something that's just known that doesn't have to be said when it's coming in. When a mill is on fire in New Bedford or Fall River, either city knows, hey, we're gonna have to send some help when they request, because that's just what we do, you know. So I'm sure over there it's the same thing, especially with how big it is. Right. You need manpower. Those guys are taking a beating that are out there, and women.
Yeah, and thank you for that. So, just so the audience knows, when you're fighting well, first off, have you ever had any like brush fires or fires like what's happening in LA? I know not on that large scale, but have you ever had any like wildfires that have gotten out of control that you've had to fight?
So here in Mass, it's a little bit different. We'll have brush fires that'll happen, but we have the state, because there's a lot of state parks. So the state kind of takes the lead. We'll come in and assist.
Okay.
But I've never personally dealt with anything close to what, you know, they're dealing with in LA. Our stuff is pretty much, we can contain it. It's you know, it's not going to go that far. And I think the climate's different too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you do you have any of your co-workers that are in LA right now, or
not that I know of?
Not that you know of, probably because that's quite a trip. To get, you know, because I know right now from what I've seen, they're using the, you know, obviously neighboring towns and cities and neighboring states.
Right.
So, and in your years of fighting fires, so talk to us. Well, first off, before we get into some of that, because I want to talk a little bit about LA. You actually won an award a couple of years ago for, and maybe you've won it multiple times, but you were a firefighter of the year for saving some lives. Now, I know you're a humble guy, but talk to us a little bit about that, because that's quite an honor.
Yeah, so 2018, I was actually on the inspection side, doing inspections, and the building department inspector for our city, he called me up to come to a 2-family house that had some issues going on. So he wanted me to go through and just check for their fire alarm systems to see what needed to be done. And so I just went there, just dressed regular. It's a normal day. It's not uncommon for him to call us and for us to make the trip. And as we were going through the house, I noticed that it was all outdated. But when I was on the 3rd floor of the house, as I walked to one end of the apartment and I turned around to come back, I could see smoke in the stairwell. And then the fire came out. So at that point, I had a guy that was up there with me, and I brought him down through, because that was our main way out of that house. And so I pushed him through it, called it in. When we got to the bottom of the stairs, he said, my brother's still up there.
Oh, wow.
And so at that point, the fire was already in the stairwell, and I ran back up in there, grabbed the brother, brought him out, and I had already called in the first time as soon as I saw the fire. So our guys were already showing up on the scene as I was bringing the second guy out. So we was able to get everybody out of there. I didn't realize not necessarily in that moment, but somewhere down the line, my chief in the fire department, Chief Lynch, had put me in for an award, and the state recognized it as a Medal of Valor, which they had a ceremony. And so it was definitely the highlight of my career. You know, I got a lot of great times and highlight stuff like that, but to be able to achieve something like that, you don't really go there necessarily to try to get a medal, but it was great to be honored,
Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. Great stuff. Dawn, do you have a question?
No.
Okay. uh,
I was supposed to have a question.
so, couple things. So you are, you're in Fall River. You've been on the force or you've been with the fire department for over 20 years. And so when you see new recruits come in, and I have nothing, I did not do the research, but statistically, how many of the new recruits actually make it? Is it a high percentage, low percentage? They come in, they're ready, they want to spend their entire life fighting fires, doing what you do, and then how many of them actually make it like more than a year or two?
It's actually the percentage of getting on, at least for our city, is very good. Their process of hiring and stuff allows you to see that person and expose them to things before they even get into the company. And so we will know beforehand, one, if you're afraid of heights, if you're claustrophobic, if there's a fire, they have burn buildings, and so they're sending you in. So they get a good judge during your academy time to find out what type of person you are and if you're going to make it on the job. So we have a high percentage of people that come on. It is very low of people that do not make it on the job. And once you're on for life. The percentage of people leaving is it's less than 1%.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is you have a process in place to maybe weed out, if you will, some people that just aren't, it's just not going to be a good career choice for them.
Yeah, absolutely. They actually, any new hires that are coming through or potential people that are coming on the job, they're actually going to sit down with several deputy chiefs and the big chief in our department. And all of those guys have years of fighting fires, being in the company. And so they already know what it means to be a firefighter, what it takes to do the job. So if they pass by them, then you at least know that this person can do the job.
Gotcha. All right. So for those of you who maybe just joining us late, we're talking with firefighter Lieutenant Jay Campbell, over 20 years on the force. And he's not even that old. So he's been doing this since he was a very, very young man. He's also a minister, and we'll get into some of that a little later on. So let's talk about LA and what is going on with in Los Angeles. So you've been doing this your whole life, most of your adult life. What are you seeing when you see on the news what's happening? And then we'll get into some of the aspects of what's being reported, but what do you think is actually going on, and how do they have you, just what's your take on it, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, LA is experiencing the worst scenario that just happened to bring all the things together to cause this fire to spread and do the damage it's doing. I wouldn't say that it's something that other people couldn't predict was going to happen, because that area is so large, there's so many acres, it's dry, but it's like the perfect storm. Everything comes together, and it's like you hope it doesn't happen, but when it does, you're in trouble.
What's your take on so it seems like every time we have a terrible tragedy, politics gets involved. And, my take, and I'm just a person, but I don't to me, there does need to be a time of what did we do right, what did we do wrong, but it's usually after, you've put the fire out. But what is your whole take on, and maybe not, I'm not asking you to take sides politically, but what are you seeing when you're seeing people on the news just rip the mayor and rip the governor, and like, what does that do to you as being a firefighter? How do you feel about all that?
So I can't say, because I am not necessarily a firefighter in those communities. So I don't want to speak specifically for firefighters there. So I'm just going to speak on my opinion on it. That area is so large, Eric, with acreage, dry land. What we have in the city for water supply, they don't have out there, for whatever the reason. I mean, they can blame the mayor, they can blame other people, but they don't have it there. I'll say this for all those firefighters that are out there. They're out there doing their job because that's what they do.
Yeah.
And they're aware of it. And so when we go to fight a fire in our city, could there have been things done differently? There could have been, but as far as our preparation and knowing our city, that's our job. That's our job to know. And when it's not going right, it's our job of our chief to say, hey guys, I need you to pull out. Your life is more important than what's going on here. We'll do what we can with what we got. But on the news, it's a lot easier for people to critique and say they should have this, they should have that. It doesn't change the scenario for all those guys that are out there and women that are out there fighting that fire.
Yeah.
And I think for most of the fire department out there, politics really doesn't matter to them because they're battling right now.
Mm-hmm.
And Jay, how exhausted must these men and women, like, have you ever had anything where you had to fight the same fire, or maybe a fire that just spread to multiple buildings for, like, what's the longest you've ever had to fight a fire that you just couldn't get under control?
I'd probably say the longest fires that I've experienced were the mill fires. You're there. I mean, at least a day, and you're rotating out and stuff like that. But even normal house fires, here's the thing: when you're going in there, your gear you're wearing, I know with wildland firefighters, their gear's a little bit lighter than ours, but with us geared up, that's 75 pounds more on us.
Wow.
That we're carrying. And then on top of that, you're dragging hose lines upstairs, through the houses. Once they're charged, it's work. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. For those guys that are out there, one, they don't have the water to control that fire. So they're running back and forth, trying to get water going up there, trying to make a stop. It's almost like a process is endless for them.
Yeah.
And so they are. I mean, you're going to wear those guys out very quickly. So I just think that with everything that's going on there, those firefighters that are out there, man, it's a lot of props, a lot of respect for them hanging in there, knowing that realistically, when you're seeing those fires, especially when you're seeing all the videos with the flamed houses and people are still staying inside there, risking their life really for nothing. But all those firefighters are still running out there trying to work, knowing that they can't stop that fire. All they're really trying to do is save life for the most part in those communities. They're trying to get those people out of there and trying to see if there's a chance they can slow it down. But realistically, they know there's no way they're stopping that.
Yeah.
Know this, with the fire, you have to have enough water to be able to overcome that fire that's in front of you. If you don't have that, you don't beat out that fire.
And well, Jay, that leads me to my next question. We've watched reports where fire hydrants they're not working, or that they don't have enough water, or the power was cut, so the pump doesn't work. So I'm assuming that fire hydrants either run off gravity or they run off an electric pump. Is that what you have in your area?
So when you look at fire hydrants, they're typically they're connected to a distribution system, the piping that's running through the city. There's a source somewhere that's feeding it, whether it's gravity fed or reservoirs like in Fall River. So you have a water supply there. As far as my understanding, there's no water over there.
Yeah.
So it's probably not a shock. It's probably not a shock to the firefighters, but from a news standpoint, ooh, the hydrants don't have water. Well, no kidding. There's no water to feed into them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the difference there. Most of your local communities that have hydrants, there is a water source that's feeding it, that's adequate to handle, if something happens. Oh, in LA, they don't have that there.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, there's no reservoirs over there that contain water. Now I could be wrong on it, but
Yeah.
Anything that's close by there, it's all dried up.
And talking with firefighter and Minister Jay Campbell here from the Boston metro area on Mauck Talk. Jay, so there obviously, let's shift back to where you're at in Boston. And I remember living in the Northeast. What happens when it's so cold, the water freezes?
It sucks.
So that is is there a solution of some sort, or
As a firefighter?
yeah, as a
Okay.
firefighter, is that like, how do you fight a fire when it's 10 degrees below with the wind chill?
So in any cold places, all our hydrants are dry hydrants. Meaning there's no water in that hydrant until we open it up.
Got it.
Okay.
So whatever water is there is going to be below the freezing point. So typically when we go to our hydrants, once we open it up, we're flowing water. Once you're flowing water, it doesn't freeze.
Okay.
The residual water now, whatever's getting sprayed all over the place, that stuff is going to freeze. When we're going out, we just had a fire a couple days ago, and it was freezing cold out, and our stuff was frozen by the time we got done with the fire. But as far as having water and stuff like that, no, anywhere that it's cold, the hydrants are dry hydrants until we open it up. Water's coming out of it. You can always flow water. So what sucks is that it is freezing cold, but it doesn't change the game necessarily as far as fighting the fire.
Jay, let's switch gears a little bit to your. So you have been, I've known you for 20 some odd years. You've been in the ministry for a while. Do you have any stories to where, I'm sure you do, where people have been devastated and your faith has helped, or maybe tell us a story or two about anyway how your faith has connected with some of the people that you've helped in the last 20 some odd years.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I grew up in a home where my mom was alcoholic and drug addict. And so we experienced some stuff because of that. And we always grew up either in shelters or the project. So when we got to Fall River, that was actually our first apartment we ever had been in. It was like we finally felt like we had a house. And so I had a next door neighbor, Kashaka, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
His mom actually invited me out to church. And so I went to church with them. And so a few years went by. I'm probably about 17, 18 at this point. I remember the bar that was in our neighborhood was called Against All Odds. And I remember being out there one day, and I felt like God just told me. It wasn't like I was super spiritual at that point, because I was not. But I felt like when I stood out there in front of it, that God had told me, if you'll follow me, I will change your life. And that was like my moment that I felt like I want to follow you. I didn't know what that was going to entail. my life did not get better anytime soon after that. The decisions and choices I made weren't always the right decisions, but I had a heart to follow after God. And so when I look back, over the 20 years, there's no way that I could imagine where I'm at today and see that Jay that, I remember, whether it was the principal of the high school or the pastor of the church that I was at. Their advice at that time, and my pastor said this: he's lucky he doesn't end up in jail. If he doesn't end up in jail, that's great. And so when I look back and I see God's hand over my life, I am so glad that I committed my life to Him, and I've been walking after Him. And my hope is, in our church, in our city, is I want to reach people that are like me. Yeah. That need that hope, that need that change. I know it doesn't happen overnight, but I just believe the same God that worked with me and been there with me through the ups and the downs is the same God that can be with somebody else and help them along their way. And so that drives my passion for it.
Have you ever been, over your 20 years, do any of the people that you, when you're trying to save their home or save their kids or their pets or themselves, have they ever asked you to pray with them? Or, not even necessarily knowing that you're a minister, but it's just in a moment and they need to pray. What are some of those situations that you've noticed over the last 20 years?
So I haven't had too much on a fire scene because that's pretty much just a working scene. Although I'll give you a funny story, because you used to be a part of the church that I was a part of. I show up at a high rise for a fire that's going on there. And I'm going in with my crew, and an individual that's holding the door says, "Oh, that's Brother Jay. Hallelujah. Hallelujah." And so now my guys on my squad, they're like, "Hallelujah. Hallelujah, Jay." I'll never forget that moment. But yeah, for the most part, when we're working, it's a working scene. Most of my time of being able to talk and connect and walk with people through the things they're going through is normally outside of that, and more on a personal level.
Yeah. Well, when, so many questions that some of the stories that you're telling, my mind's racing with a million questions, but I don't want to, we have limited time here. So let me ask you
Ask
this.
away.
Ask away. When I'm assuming, and we won't have you tell these because these are not the stories you want, but I'm assuming you've experienced, not everyone makes it out of the fire over your 20 years. And whether it's a human being or a pet, have you ever had to question any parts of your faith with your job, or has your job actually made your faith stronger? Because even in a desperate or a terrible situation, you still can find hope. So what's that kind of path look like for you?
Yeah, so I've been blessed with being with our department. We have seen children die at fires. Unfortunately, we've had, adults die, pets also. So it's always tragic. There's nothing necessarily that you could do about it. But from our standpoint as a community of firefighters, we're always going in trying to get the best results. Like, we don't ever want to see it, but we also know, like, we're gonna do everything we can to stop that from happening. Sometimes that's out of our control, so that part can weigh on us and has weighed at sometimes when we have experienced that. But as a firefighter department, we've always been community oriented. We've always tried to reach out to those families. We've tried to raise money get things together, support those that are in our community. And so we're more than just, showing up. If it doesn't work out, we just leave, good luck next time. We're not that type of department. Like, we try to do everything we can. And then when those things happen, we're there supporting them, doing the best we can to support them. And also, a lot of times people don't really look at the fire department for this aspect of it, but there's a lot of medical too that happens with that. And our city has a big drug epidemic, overdoses and stuff like that. So we do get the opportunity when we're there to see people that are in our community that are struggling. And sometimes that does open up the door for communication outside the department. And so that part I do like, because if there's a chance that, even though we've helped you on a call, my job, but if there's a way that we can help you outside when I'm not working, like, we want to try to do whatever we can to try to help people that are struggling with that also.
Yeah, the last thing before we go into, we'll talk a little bit about some of the ministry work that you do and stuff. One thing I want to talk about, you and I have talked about this, and I want to get your take on it, but everybody should have a carbon monoxide detector in their home. And Jay's got more expertise at this than me, but even if you don't have, this is Eric, this is not Jay, or this is not coming
This is
from
paranoid Eric.
Yeah. But have a carbon monoxide detector in your home. You never know. When I was a kid, we had a run-in with carbon monoxide, and thankfully my mother was able to get us out of bed. She worked third shift, and we had the gas furnace turned on for the first time in a house we were renting. And she came home from her third shift to find us all passed out. She was able to wake us. She recognized that it might be carbon monoxide. She opened up the windows, got us outside. And who knows what could have happened had she not been working that particular job at the time. But again, even, they're inexpensive. Plug one in to the wall, have one installed on the ceiling. That's just my PSA, if you will, for public service announcement for a carbon monoxide detector. So Jay, do you back me up on this? Is it a good idea to get a carbon monoxide detector?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have any fossil fuels in your house, gas or anything that's burning, wood stoves and stuff like that, you should have a carbon monoxide detector. If your place is all electric, then you don't need it. But anything that has fossil fuels and stuff like that, you should have a carbon monoxide detector. You just don't know when something could go wrong. And if it does go wrong, there's a chance that you don't wake up from it. So if you do live in a place that has any type of fossil fuels and stuff like that, spend a couple dollars to get it, put it outside your bedroom. It's just peace of mind.
Oh, we have one outside the bedroom. We have one in the bathroom. We have one in the kitchen. We have one in the hallway. We have one in every single bedroom.
Yeah,
And
you don't need
also,
that
he
many.
has one that he travels with, and he would bring it to my parents' house, which is all electric, just in case, just in case.
Yeah.
But you know what? Go ahead, Jay.
I'll say this. I was telling Eric, in New Hampshire, like, we have people that they die from carbon monoxide. And I'm always surprised because they don't have carbon monoxides in their units or in those houses. And there's fuels that can create it. You just don't know when it happens. But once you hear those stories, you're like, man, if they just had one detector in there, they would have heard it. And yeah. So carry them around, Eric.
You're not helping my case, Jay.
Sorry.
Well, I'll tell you,
that insurance must be high on you, Eric.
she's unplugging them from the wall. But no, it is something. And it's because, again, that time I was probably in 8th grade, and I will never forget just the headache. And, again, it was, but you do see this every once in a while. You see a story where, a family might be vacationing and,
Oh, yeah.
the
Right.
Airbnb may not have one, or it's faulty, or, it's just a good idea. I'm not saying you have to be paranoid like me and carry it around, but I don't have one with me now. But it is a good idea. They're fairly inexpensive. In California, they're mandatory in homes, and other states they are not. But it's a good idea. You can get one for 20, 25 bucks. Go to your local Target, Walmart,
Or just come by the
Amazon.
Mauck's house. We have an extra
Swing
one.
by
Right,
my
right.
house. I've got 30 extra. I'll take care of you. So we've got just a few minutes left here, Jay. I wanted to kind of get into some of the ministry aspects and things that you've done. When you were younger, you had people that mentored you, and now you're old like us. Sorry, you are.
Right.
But are you over the last few years, have you had the chance to mentor any young people in the ministry?
Yeah. I have. We have a great group in our church, and just very fortunate to have people that are connected in our community. They have the same heartbeat, love God, want to reach out to other people, and so it's created an opportunity for us to be very involved in our community, whether it's the homeless shelter. We have an organization that we help out a lot every year for children that are in our community that have cancer and their families need support. Food drives. Again, it's a lot of what we're connected to is because of the people that are in our church. They're connected to people in our city that have a larger platform, and so we get to be a part of that and help support and just do a lot more community-based that makes a difference in our city, and helps us too to have an opportunity just to be able to talk and see where people are at, in their life. Not necessarily, to drag them to church, but if there's something we can do, we want to be a part of it. We want to help out. So we've been afforded, but as far as the mentoring stuff, it's I've got a great group that are with me right now, and it inspires me to see the things that they're doing. And I am thankful for people that don't just want to sit in the church. They want to get involved in our community. They want to be a part of, being the I want to say the hands and feet of God, but giving that cup or giving that food, and there's no expectation of you coming to church. Yeah. There's no expectation of you claiming Jesus. If we can bless you and help you out, that's what we want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the reason I asked that too was, so do you see a difference? I mean, I know you have children, and then in your church you have, young people. Back when you and I, and I'm older than you, but when we were teenagers,
that's right.
Not much. Probably what, 10 years? I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's going to catch up to you, brother. But anyway, do you see a difference? I see, and I haven't been a pastor in 20 years. But when I was a pastor, we didn't have, Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and, cell phones were for emergencies, and we didn't, the internet wasn't connected. You didn't have a smartphone. I sound so old, I can't even describe it. But do you see a difference between back when you were mentored and some of the problems you had versus the problems that the people you're mentoring now? Like, what does that look like? Is it a lot more challenging with all the different social media, or have you not even noticed the difference?
Outside influence.
Yeah. I feel like they're definitely exposed to a lot more than what we were, and not necessarily in a negative way, but where we kind of grew up and you just kind of heard from a few people how it's supposed to be, what you're supposed to do, and then you're just stuck in that community. where now with social media, all these platforms, you can search and hear from different organizations or ministers, and any of the questions you have, you can find that input. And I think the biggest difference for me that I see now is that people are at least more honest now and say, I don't see that, or I don't believe that. We didn't say that because we were going to hell.
Well, yeah, we didn't,
if we
day.
disagreed, you wasn't going to do nothing in church, and you're going to be sat down, and
Right.
you don't really love God. Where now in the current generation, if they don't see it, they let you know it, and you're just like, hey, all right, well, I'm here. I'm not sending you to hell. You're in a space where you're exploring, trying to figure it out. I just felt like that the biggest difference for me, I feel, is in our generation, we didn't have where we could talk back or ask questions.
Do people challenge you so you give a sermon? Do you have people coming up to you after the sermon and said, hey, I looked this up and you're wrong? Does that happen?
No. I feel like,
not directly after then.
So not directly, but typically when you're talking with people, right, a lot of people are kind of turned off from church. Obviously, it's the Northeast. Church really isn't their thing, and a lot of it looks like, hey, it's man-made. Man is controlling you, so you got to battle like all the church hurt. Church hurt is huge. So if anybody did anything to a family member, something like that, they'll never forget it. And so when you meet them, that's what you're facing. And I realized that church hurt is real. Like what you felt, what you experienced is real. But I also know that church hurt wasn't God.
Yeah.
That was whoever those people were, right? Like not every church is a bad church, right? Not everybody that preaches is trying to take advantage of you. But I feel like because they're honest, at least you can have that dialogue with them and you know where they're at. Where I felt like we never had that opportunity. You don't say nothing back because they're sitting you down. Like you just need to go along with it. And to me, that was more deadly because now you had to hide. You had to hide anything you did.
Yes.
And hope it never came out. So yeah, I'd say there's some differences in it. Whether it's, good or bad, I don't know. I mean, I feel like even in the place we were at, we still managed to do stuff that we shouldn't have done, and so I don't think that'll ever change.
Yeah. Thankfully we didn't have social media growing up for sure.
We would have left sooner.
Yeah. But as far as that, it's an interesting thing. I don't know about you, Don, but when I was a kid, if your pastor said something, you didn't question it, even if you knew they were wrong. Did you ever question your pastor about it?
No way.
No, I would never.
No, but I will tell you that recently we've been looking for a local church, and the message wasn't entirely accurate. It was kind of picked out of the Bible and put into a context that the preacher wanted. And Eric walked out saying, that's not right. That's not right. And he didn't go tell the preacher that, but there's a pastor, but he knew that it was not factual, and to know that some of that stuff does go on, and it probably did go on when we were kids too. We just trusted and we believed.
Right.
And I think what you're saying is, like these people are not afraid to say, hey, prove it to me. And so I think that's a greater challenge for our generation is how do we prove it to them, or how do we show them? We're just asking them to trust, but they can't see it. They can't see it in action.
Right.
They don't feel it the way that we do, I guess, until they do.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. I think at least in our generation with like Eric Mauck, there was a lot of preaching against things that wasn't there. So like we would harp on people, organizations, or certain sins, and we never had proximity to any of that stuff. And I feel like when you have proximity to someone and you start to hear their story, you start to understand decisions and choices they make. It changes everything, right? It's almost like you have this black and white thing. Oh, someone committed adultery. Like they're such a sinner, they're not going to make it. And it's like that's good when you're far away.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk with them and you find out their life has been a mess way before adultery, right? They've been struggling. They're just trying to find a way. Well, now you got some proximity, and now it changes it because you built a relationship. So I know my job is really not to convince somebody to change their mind. I'm just hoping in the relationship part, you trust that I'm at least trying to do my best. I'm still probably going to be wrong at times. I'm probably still going to make mistakes, but I am going to try to do my best. And the only way I feel like you build it is if you do have that type of relationship, with people. Yeah. Nowadays, you don't have that unless you're a part of the crew of ministers, a platform team. You don't know your pastor.
That's true.
Right? You don't have that relationship. Yeah. It's
right.
a one-way street, and so I think that was kind of one of the benefits of when we grew up in church earlier was you did have that proximity to them. However, you couldn't question them. Nowadays, you don't have that. Someone else is intervening, and it's like, it kind of changes it because you can look from the outside and catch a small clips of someone's life and say, what an idiot. But when you start to talk with them and understand their story, you're like, I get it, man. I get it. You thought you was doing the best and it just didn't work out.
Yeah. Well, we've got a couple of minutes left here. Jay, thank you so much for joining us for the full hour. Filling in again, Rob and Travis weren't able to make it tonight. And we had, this was supposed to be a panel interview, but it turned into just me interviewing you. But you have a very interesting story. And, we'll probably have you on again at some point. Hopefully, we have you on to talk about different things other than some of the terrible things that are happening right now in LA. But
right.
Anything you'd like to leave
definitely.
us with? Any kind of organization you'd like to pump up, or any charity group out there that we should know about?
I would just say, with everything that's going on, if you got a lead in to give, whether it's to the LA fires or even just in your local area, the charities that are out there, be open to make a move to reach out, be generous. And it always comes back. It always comes back to you. And so thank you guys for having me on. It's been great. I definitely will look forward to coming on and chatting about life and anything else that we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
it's been great.
Maybe not such deep topics next time, but we really appreciate it, Jay. Yeah, God bless, and please stay safe out there. So,
and warm.
All right.
And warm for sure. And come visit us here in Texas.
4 more months. Right.
Hey, come visit us before the summer. The summers here suck. So, but
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, another great episode here of Mauck Talk. And anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
I'm good.
Yeah. Well, we'll be right back here Monday at 6 o'clock Central Time, 7 o'clock East Coast Time, Pacific Time. It is 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
Wow. I lived on the Pacific Coast for so long. Time zones mix me up, but
3 years.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody. God bless. And we will see you next week on Mauck Talk.